Yes, Mayor.
Say something.
Okay, we have all staff on standby. We have our deputies. I believe I can see. We have a couple of guests as well. I think we are set to go. It is 7 o'clock. I hereby welcome you to the council meeting for Tuesday, the 24th of November, 2020. And in doing so, I'd like to acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Kaurna, of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respects to elders past and present.
Yeah.
We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today.
There's just bookcases and rooms. You don't know where they are. Might be the council.
Thank you. If you could put yourself on mute while you're listening in, that'd be great. Read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. On leave, we have Councillor Harris. Apologies. It doesn't look like we have any apologies, not that I can see. And that moves us to declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Do we have any? Councillor Pearce. Just take yourself off mute there, Councillor. That's it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, 10.2, I want to declare conflict of interest. However, I'll be staying in the conversation and also voting on the matter.
So that's a perceived or a material conflict of interest?
Sorry, my apologies. Perceived.
Perceived conflict of interest. Okay, thank you. And duly recorded. Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, can I ask the nature of the conflict?
Yes, Councillor Pearce.
Well, Belford Avenue, I live in Belford Avenue.
So you live on the street that the item relates to?
Correct.
Thank you. Any further conflicts of interest? No, there being a case, I'll move to confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council for Tuesday, the 27th. Do I have someone who's wished to confirm those as a true record? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it? No, do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it? Any further debate? I'll close the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried. Thank you. Unanimously.
Excuse me, Mayor, can I just ask a brief question? I've just been contacted by someone who would like to ask a question in public question time.
Right.
I'm wondering how they might do that.
We did discuss this when we met online. We have allowed questions with notice. Appreciate this one. We didn't get a lot of notice about this time for notice. If they can text me their question, would probably be one way around it. They don't have my number. They've clearly got yours. They can text it to you and you can put it up on the chat function.
Done. Thank you.
Okay. Talk about late notice, because that's the item we're at now, item 6, public question time. As I said, I will allow one to come through via text, only because we're in a peculiar situation. Just to remind those watching, we can meet in person, which would have meant the public question time could have been easier for people. However, we'd advertised this as a Zoom meeting, and because it's a public agenda that has to be put out on the Thursday, as in accordance with the Act, we have kept by what we've advertised. And I hope you appreciate that, despite the difficulties it will present tonight. Now, Councillor Groot, I've not received a question. I'll give them a couple more minutes.
Yes, look, I've just advised them, so I'll let you know if I get something through.
Okay, as I say, I'll give them a couple more minutes. We do have some deputies lined up. I can see Kate Hart there. I can see Terry Devlin. I am looking for Jack Condis. He may be on someone else's phone. Could you, Jack, if you're there, can you just identify yourself? We'll come to you in a moment, but just let me know you're actually online. No, I can't see anyone in there identifying themselves as Jack Condis, so we'll give him a few more minutes. I have a question has arrived by text from Mark Standen, and the question is regarding the ongoing consultation process of upgrading the play space at Prospect Gardens. I've noticed that the core flute posters and the Facebook page show two very different proposals. Which design concept is the one the community should be commenting on? CEO, through you to the director, I presume.
Correct, Chair. Thank you. Just to the director. Thank you, Simon.
Through the chair, I'm not aware that there's any differences between the core flutes and the website. I will investigate that straight away and make clear which is the most appropriate design, but I'm not aware of any differences. So I'll follow that up straight away. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the answer been provided and that will be taken on notice. As said, there are no further questions in public question time, so I'll close public question time. I acknowledge that I now can see Jack Condis. Thank you for that, for identifying yourself. We now have the petitions. We have nil, just to close that out. Deputations, we have 3. Mr. Jack Condis, you are the first. Then we have Mrs. Kate Hart and then Mr. Terry Devlin. Each of you have 5 minutes. And I understand that some of you have material that you wish to present to us. And I presume, Jack, that is what, where are we? Let me see myself. That is what you want us to see or be looking at while you're speaking. Is that correct? You could take yourself off mute.
Unmute.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Is that the presentation that you wish us to look at?
I thought Jasmine was going to put it on screen for you to see.
Okay, we'll just check with Jazz if we can screen share. That's coming up now. Okay, so you have 5 minutes, but before you start, if you could tell us your name and address for the purposes of the minutes.
My name is Jack Condis. I live at 25 Tiarnu Avenue, and I'm doing a deputation on behalf of 39 residents of Tiarnu Avenue.
Okay, 5 minutes starts now.
Right, the first picture shows you a parking problem that we all have, where cars are not obeying the laws of the country, the road rules. Could we move to the next slide, please? Tiarnu Avenue, the key issues. It's recognised as a narrow street. Prospect Council has recognised it. It's a dangerous street for students at Blackfriars School, with similar problems occurring around Prescott College. Our students and residents' safety must come first. Stats show Prospect has a high accident rate, and you probably were all astounded to see that alongside the Adelaide CBD, we had 783 accidents occur in Prospect, not necessarily on Tiarnu Avenue, but certainly a number have. Blackfriars is the only secondary school located on Prospect Road. Students ride to school sometimes, but more often they are driven. Very few bikes there now, picked up after school, often for safety reasons. Residents say Tiarnu Avenue problems have been going on for 25 years. Many have had cars damaged, mirrors broken, or very close calls. We've only lived here 2 years, and my wife is petrified driving up Tiarnu towards Prospect Road or trying to enter Prospect Road at specific times. Prospect Road will get busier with the increase in apartment builds that now are happening now and for the future. Blackfriars is a popular school and can only grow in size. There are no student parking on the premises and none is planned after my discussions with the principal. Next slide, please. You can see what I'm pointing out about illegal parking. a fire truck couldn't get through there, nor could an ambulance, nor could any of our service trucks. Next slide, please. I just picked up a few slides that show fire trucks, very large trucks that have to get through, and in some they've damaged cars in order to get to their respective fire. We've had 3 fires in TNU Avenue and Wilson Street in the last 6 months. I experienced one on Friday where a shed was caught fire. An ambulance, 2 fire brigades had difficulty getting through because there was construction work being done in the street. Next slide, please. I just put a few slides up here to show you the problems, the entrance to school and the entrance to car parks or driveways, single driveways in TNU. I know that Prospect Council has moved a couple of signs to prohibit people parking close to the corner. And I know some cars take the advantage of trying to park on the footpath to keep their cars away from any damage. If you go now to the next slide, you'll see I've seen where in walking up and down TNU, people, as slide 1 shows you, parking on the footpath. Large vans are trying to get onto Prospect Road. Excursions must be part of the curriculum, and there's a car trying to overtake a bus which is parked on the left, waiting for students to aboard their excursion. Another car, I've done this myself, put the head of the car out there trying to see to be able to negotiate a right-hand turn at that intersection. A large van parked in the street makes passing difficult on the left when there's cars on the right, as you see in slide 6. A bus on the left, a truck on the right, another truck in front. You have to be pretty good to be able to negotiate through there. And obeying the rules of the road. But
1 minute, Mr. Condis.
Certainly. Next slide, please. Solutions. Yellow lines repainted to highlight the no parking areas already marked. Many have faded. Yellow lines introduced a deterrent on corners of Mora and Bradford Street, please. Improve the access to the school parking area. Parking at certain times on the northern side causes serious difficulties. Introduce no parking on the northern side. It's with appropriate signage. And the map that was sent out by council has this in mind. Provide residents with yellow lines in front of their driveways, please, to provide ample width to enter and exit their single driveways. Explore a voucher scheme, similar to the Adelaide City Council, that allow residents, visitors to park in no parking areas. Introduce limited parking on special event days. Paul Prescott College, they've nowhere to park and yet double parking occurs there. When you go to Europe, you see you can't drive through particular suburbs.
You could finish up, Mr. Condis.
Beg your pardon?
If you could finish up, please. Your 5 minutes expired.
Finish up by saying that we need the 40 miles per hour throughout our suburbs. We also need to be able to access our parking inspectors more readily. And we need to know what the budget is going to be for the future development of car parking and fining of people that don't obey the laws.
Thank you. Thank you.
Limit
Thank you. Thank you. I've got 3 deputations tonight. I need to be very careful on time to make sure that everyone's seen as being treated fairly. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your slides. That's very informative. I now go to the elected members to ask if any of you have any questions for the deputy. No, that appears to be the case. If you could put yourself back on mute, Mr. Condis. And we'll now ask for the second deputy, Mrs. Kate Hart. If you could turn your video on, thank you. Welcome back in an interesting kind of way. Good to see you again. For the purposes of the minutes, if you could state your name and address.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's Kate Hart from 18 Tianu Avenue, Prospect.
And you have 5 minutes, which starts now.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, for the opportunity to present to you tonight on a matter that will directly impact on my husband and I, our family and visitors, and other residents on the northern side of Tianu Avenue. By way of background, Mr. Condis approached me with his petition on the weekend of the 23rd of September this year, suggesting there was a problem with traffic movements and car parking in the street. His resolution was to seek the imposition of car parking restrictions on the northern side. He further suggested that this would not be an issue for the household and visitors because council would issue permits so that these restrictions would not apply to us or our fellow residents. My deputation tonight focuses on the fact that the proposed 24/7 car parking restrictions as recommended by council's traffic engineer is a sledgehammer approach to an issue which has little validity and has not been demonstrated. The recommendations presented to you focus on two main issues: traffic management and car parking issues in Tianu Avenue. The traffic data and survey undertaken identifies there is no significant traffic management issues to be addressed. In fact, I note the traffic data has clearly demonstrated the majority of road users travel under 45 kilometres per hour. Only 4 traffic accidents have been recorded over a 4-year period as a result of inattention and failing to stop at the stop sign on the corner of Prospect Road and not traffic volume or speed. However, importantly, there has been no data presented which actually addresses the issue of car parking demand or illegal parking. But despite this, the recommendation supports the petition to introduce car parking restrictions. There was no car parking demand analysis undertaken, and if it was undertaken, it would have demonstrated there was no significant demand for on-street car parking to warrant the suggested imposition of restricted car parking 24/7 and no demonstrated illegal parking occurring. As such, it completely fails to demonstrate to council the necessary information in order for councillors to make an informed decision on such an important and impacting issue on residents of the northern side. I'm also concerned that the council letter to survey the community about the car parking restrictions has potentially influenced the respondents. The council letter forwarded for the purposes of community consultation specifically indicates that no stopping will facilitate safe traffic movements, reduce congestion, and improve vehicle access into and out of driveways. I suggest to you that this is a misleading and false statement leading to a flawed consultation process. As I've already highlighted, the traffic data collected on vehicle movements clearly indicates there is not a safety issue on Tianu Avenue. Whilst there are high volumes due to Blackfriars College and students drop off and pick up at the Prospect Road end only, this is to be expected and only occurs on school days in the morning and afternoon. As traffic speeds are slow during this time, there is no safety issue demonstrated and any congestion is very short term. The suggestion that restricted parking on the northern side will improve vehicle access to properties is incorrect, as it will in fact lead to difficulties in accessing driveways. We have first-hand experience of this when a vehicle is parked opposite our driveway, making it difficult to access our driveway and to move in and out of our property. So to suggest that it will improve access to properties is totally incorrect. I also believe that all car parking on the southern side as recommended will actually lead to faster traffic speeds as motorists speed up when there is a barrel effect. It will also lead to congestion and a safety issue as there is nowhere to pull over and allow vehicles to pass, whereas parking on both sides of the street actually has a natural slowing effect on traffic movements and adds to safety. Finally, the proposed parking restrictions are not necessary and are too extreme and do not impact on the properties. We've been residents for nearly 5 years. During this time, in particular in the last 18 months, there's been unprecedented amount of building development occurring with 3 new houses, including Mr. Condis's, 3 major renovations, including our home, and other minor developments. I put to you that Mr. Condis does not understand the traffic movement or car parking demand in the street due to this incredible amount of development and has been here for less than 2 years. I further put to you that the photographic evidence as presented to him does not demonstrate a problem, and in actual fact, the impact of Mr. Condis's property personally, because of his suggestion, will be nil, but will be significant to all residents on the northern side. I therefore recommend to you that the recommendation of imposing car parking restrictions on the northern side will in fact create a problem and is not currently issued. I recommend to you that you vote against the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bang on time. Elected members, do you have any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So there was a significant amount of construction happening in the street for a condensed period of time. Has that construction largely come to an end? And if it has, what's the feel of what the traffic is like now without the additional trades vehicles in the street? Is there a drop back to what it might have been considered the pre-construction boom norm, or what's the feel of the street on that point, please?
Thank you for your question, Deputy Mayor. There has been a significant change in the on-street car parking demand because that development is no longer occurring. The majority of renovations and new build has now concluded. We do not see tradespersons, vehicles or trucks entering and staying within the street for an extended period of time. So I certainly believe that in the last 18 months, Mr Condis's experienced movement in the street, which is not typical for Tianu Avenue, has not occurred in the past and will likely not incur to the extent that it has in the future.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Groot.
Thank you, Mayor. This is probably a question better for Jack Condis, but meeting procedures won't allow me to go back and ask him a question, I'm sure.
Correct.
Yeah, just testing. So, Kate, you made mention of the petition referring permit parking, which has been a bit of a bugbear of mine for a little while. I can only ask for you, of course. Were you under the impression that permit parking would be provided by council under the proposal put up by Mr Condis?
Thank you for the question. Certainly Mr Condis advocated strongly to me that permit car parking would be available, and on that basis he encouraged me to sign the petition, which I did not do. The council consultation letter clearly indicated that permit parking would not be provided, and my understanding is that one resident withdrew their support for the petition on the basis that permit car parking would not be available. We've spoken to neighbours who've lived on the street for a long time, 29 years and longer, and consider that permit parking is not a solution to an issue that does not exist.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Ritt.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Kate. Do you think there's a risk in the recommendations we've got put forward to us, in that some people who have, not withdrawn but still signed the petition are believing have signed it potentially under those false pretenses of the permit parking, which we know is not the case?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. There's no doubt that when you're presented with a person on your doorstep suggesting that you'd be able to get a permit, and then getting a letter by the council asking you to tick a box as to whether you support the suggestion or not, are two completely different approaches to community consultation. So my concern is that residents on the street still consider they'd be able to get a car parking permit. We know that not everybody in the street responded to the survey, and in actual fact doesn't represent what I would consider to be a valid number of people supporting the proposal.
Thank you. I might just ask from the chair, you have in your street some pretty draconian parking restrictions already, with probably 2/3 of the street restricted between 8 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon on the north side. Mr Condis's contention is that that's not enough because there's problems outside of those hours. Have you noticed from your experience outside of those hours that there are problems like he has mentioned? Or because I understand the 24/7 aspect is of concern to you. What behaviour have you observed outside of those restricted hours?
Thank you, Mayor. So we did provide some photographs to all councillors, which were random photos in the street that demonstrated that we do not believe there was a problem out of hours. And it was interesting to see the photos that Mr Condis presented did not generally represent the section of the street that he wants to see restricted. It represented the corner where there is intersection with Prospect Road, and represented Bradford and Mora Avenues. We don't consider that there is a problem, certainly not after hours. Even with school traffic, there are some students who park in the street. They will park on the southern side because of that restricted car parking during 8 to 4, but they certainly don't extend halfway up the street. And I think the 8 to 4 generally deals with the capacity for the street to accommodate vehicles moving in and out of Blackfriars College, and works quite well down the western end. But to actually suggest that we need restrictions all the way along Tianu up to Bradford would be, as I've indicated, certainly an overkill.
Yep, thank you. Further questions from the elected members? That being the case, thank you, Mrs. Hart, for your, sorry, Christine, Councillor Barnett, you wish to ask a question? Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, just before we go into discuss the recommendations, could I check, Mayor, whether you're going to take the recommendations in two parts, parts one and parts two?
I'm happy to take it in parts, but we're not there yet, councillors.
Oh, all right, sorry.
Sorry, Kate, thank you for your presentation. If you could put yourself on mute and turn your camera off, because that gets you onto the side screens rather than the front screen.
Excellent, thank you.
I now call upon Mr. Terry Devlin. If you could turn your video on, thank you, welcome, and you're off mute. You're the third deputation tonight. If you could, as you've heard, provide your name and address for the purposes of the minutes.
All right, Terry Devlin from 46 Howard Street, Nailsworth.
Thank you. And I understand you've distributed a couple of photographs, Google Earth printouts, those two.
Yeah.
Distributed to elected members. So you'll be speaking to those just so elected members get those, and your 5 minutes starts now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present this deputation. I'm speaking on behalf of 7 residents of Howard Street, Nailsworth. I wanted to start with just a little bit of history of the driveway link in Nailsworth. So the driveway link was installed in 2008, as noted on your minutes in the February meeting. What's not noted that decision was the result of quite an extensive history. 3 traffic surveys, numerous resident complaints from speeding cars down there late at night, particularly Saturday nights. Police targeting speeding. We had a number of campaigns of police targeting speeding, and then a design effort from, I believe, Tonkin engineers at that point, who delivered a recommendation to the council. So the council selected that driveway link, and the device, since that time, the device has been largely successful in meeting the aims of that design as it was put forward. It reduced the traffic flow going down that street. We had a lot of so-called rat runners going between Main North Road and Hampstead Road. In particular, it reduced the occurrence of speeding down the length of Howard Street. So whilst it has been successful there, it has inadvertently introduced another issue, which has been noted on the petition to council, that it's created a conflict or some confusion in the traffic that flows between Balfour Street, east on Balfour Street, and the northern flowing traffic on Howard Street. Now, the council has rightly recognised and employed a consultant to give them advice, the B Engineering, to review the issues and solutions to remedy, and they came back with a report which was presented at the council meeting in February with those 5 options. And the council agreed to go out and consult, but this is where things seem to have gone amiss, in that the consultant's report selected 5 options, which were varying attempts to reduce the hazard associated with that Balfour Street, Howard Street intersection. And they qualified how much it could reduce and gave opinions about which bits it improved and which bits it left unimproved. But in no way did they recommend removing the driveway link, because it would not make any sense, because you'd be going back to a state where that safety risk that was remedied would still exist. So logically, they didn't present that as an option to solve the issue for Balfour Street. They attempted to solve it by keeping the hazard reduction of the driveway link, but assessing how they could reduce it in other ways. Now, so in light of that, we believe the decision, we would request that the decision be revisited in terms of the selection to remove that driveway link, because we think that would reinstate a hazard which a lot of work had gone into and had successfully removed that hazard. So we would request that we look at the options that are presented in that report And something like the second option would be where we would like to look at and recommend as something that would be a good solution. So I've given you two diagrams. The first one shows the current state of the Howard Street intersection. The second one shows another driveway link in Broadview. Now, if you hold that picture with the word Google at the base, you would see the road that runs left or right. If you consider that as Howard Street, and the road coming up from the bottom is Balfour Street and has a stop sign. Of course, in our Howard Street example, there'll be no road at the top. Then that would be a solution that would preserve the hazard reduction facilities of the driveway link, while also eliminate the hazard associated with cars crossing Balfour Street, where Balfour Street has the right of way. So we would request that a solution is looked at that doesn't take us backward in history and reinstate a hazard, which, you know, my family has lived in on Howard Street for 30 years. The other residents are of a similar time. We lived through all those high-speed driving down there. We lived through the increased traffic flow on Howard Street. It's not somewhere where we would like or think we should go again. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. You had 11 seconds up your sleeve. Very good. I'll now take questions from the elected members, should there be any. Councillor Ripp.
Hi, Terry. Thanks for your deputation. Quite insightful. Terry, just wanted to check with you whether you think it was reasonable or unreasonable to include the removal as an option. And the reason for that is because obviously it's a way potentially for residents to say whether they're happy or not happy with.
I
suppose
I would, if I could answer your question. Sorry, did I interrupt?
Hang on a sec, Terry. I think we're having trouble with Councillor Ripp's feed.
It's one thing to give modified.
So, Councillor Ripp, you're breaking up. Sorry, Councillor Ripp, just check your vocals again. Just speak again. Councillor Ripp. Hello.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
It's better. It's not great. Just repeat.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, it was jumpy before.
All right. Sorry, could be bad internet here at home. I might have to ring in if it continues. So apologies about that. I think Terry heard the crux of the question.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Devlin.
Yeah, I believe I did hear the question. So did I think it reasonable that the option of removing the driveway link was installed in the community consultation? I don't think it followed a logical process, so no would be my answer. I think it went through a very structured process. In the initial partition from the group, that we had a problem with Balfour Street that needed to be solved was very sound. And then going through a process of looking at how you can reduce that hazard. I know from my professional life, you know, as an engineer, we have a duty of care to reduce hazard as much as reasonably possible, or as much as reasonably practical in the terminology. And so the option of removing the driveway link wouldn't even make it past the first gate because it reinstates a hazard. So you can't sort of pay, you're taking from one to give to the other. And I don't think that's a sound process, and I don't think it's a valid consultation point, because I think it clouds the issue in that the people mightn't have been around for the original decision to make that driveway link, so they mightn't be aware of all the history that went into why that was a very good idea. Yeah, interestingly enough, the Tonkin report actually recommended making it a cul-de-sac, which we would have loved. You know, it would have absolutely quietened down the traffic in the street, would have been absolutely fantastic. But we understand that that would have been a huge imposition into the suburbs. So the compromise of the driveway link was a good solution, and it has worked.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, as a person who's nearly been wiped out there using that particular intersection, I understand a lot of the dangers, but would you agree that the current design of the driveway link is in itself a rather dangerous design? in the fact that many trucks and others, be it they may be poor drivers, but nevertheless, the current design itself is not very safe.
Yeah, I'd have to, and hence the modification that was made over the course of it to actually change the angle slightly. And having witnessed the rubbish trucks and that completely drive over the corner there in the morning when I'd be and seen them when I was waiting to go through on my push bike, I agree there's some challenges in that driveway link, but that I suppose that's why we sided with that solution that's already in Broadview, that it cuts out that issue. It becomes a very go no go situation rather than a I'm going to go and you're going to go, and yeah, the confusion in the current design is not good.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from elected members? No, that being the case, thank you very much, Mr. Devlin, for your deputation tonight. We will be dealing further with the Tianu matter, but we don't have any item of business on tonight regarding Howard and Balfour. We've heard what you've said, and thank you for coming in to us with that. If you'd like to stay for the balance of the meeting, that's fine, but you'll need to shift to the YouTube link. Otherwise, we perfectly understand if you wish to have a night at home with your family or doing something else.
No, thanks very much.
Done tonight. Thank you. You can now mute yourself, and thank you very much. We've just resumed the agenda now, elected members. Questions without notice, are there any? Councillor Groot.
Thank you, Mayor. I've actually got a couple. So the first question is in relation to the permit parking program. We had quite a bit of discussion about that over the last couple of months. I'm just wondering if somebody could provide an update about where that review is at, and apologies if I've missed an outcome that I can't recall, but I know there was some review going on. Could I just get an update on that, please?
CEO.
Yes, through you, Chair, to the Director. Simon, have you got a comment?
Thank you. Through the Chair, thank you for the question, Mark. I'm going to do some research on that as well. I know there was a bit of discussion around that around 12 months ago. I'm not sure of the current status of that, so I'm happy to chase it up ASAP and get back to elected members if that's okay.
Thank you. Second question. Sorry, if I can keep going. Second question. In terms of the yellow line markings, I see that's come up tonight in the deputation from one or two people. Can I just ask a question? Is that a council policy that we don't paint the yellow lines, or is that an administrative policy that we don't repaint yellow lines? Notwithstanding, I understand the road rule issue, but I'm just thinking about our own internal policies.
Thank you. CEO to the Director, I presume.
Yes, please.
Through the Chair, thank you. It's not a council policy that I'm aware of. It's not just a City of Prospect administration, it's a industry-wide in all local government. Once Australian road rules are updated, that it was agreed that yellow lines in general will not be repainted. So it's not a specific rule for the City of Prospect.
Thank you. Any further questions? Sorry, Councillor.
Yes, I do. I've got two others. Just noting on that one, the Port Adelaide Enfield have been very active in painting yellow lines in Northgate in the last 3 weeks, so they might not have got that memo. Third question is, in terms of the 40 km/h approvals, we just get an update on where that's at, please?
Thank you. CEO to Director, I presume.
Yes, please.
Through the Chair, we actually sent a memo an email last Thursday to DIT to find out, get an update from them. I know they were awaiting the outcomes of the City of Port Adelaide Enfield consultation around Sefton Park before they gave us our decision. But we sent an email only last week seeking an update, and we hadn't had a response yet. As soon as I do, I'll forward that to all elected members.
Thank you.
Thank you. My last one, don't turn your camera off, Simon, Director. Just over the course of 2017, 18 and 19, I've asked a number of questions around traffic management. One of those was to conduct a specific workshop looking at new thinking around the precinct by precinct approach that we take now. The last time I think discussed it publicly was in the March 2019 meeting, and I was advised then on a question on notice that we would be having that workshop after September 19, which is just over 12 months ago. So I'm just wondering, is that planned for discussion some point, maybe this year or at least this term?
Director.
Through the chair, I'm aware of that outstanding resolution. It's on our resolution register. Since then, the strategic plan or the draft strategic plan has identified need to develop a citywide traffic management plan, and that would precede that work, any work on a precinct basis. So the draft strategic plan identifies that we allocate money in next year's budget towards developing that plan. So that would be a citywide plan first we'd undertake. Following that would come precinct plans. That's our way forward, at least.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Green. Anything further?
Sorry, just to follow up on that, I'm not sure that totally answered my question. I understand the strategic plan issues, but there's a resolution that required a conversation in council, and I'd put forward somebody to have that conversation with from interstate, pre-COVID, during COVID, and maybe post-COVID. So I'm happy for you to take on notice, but I think that's a separate issue to what the strategic plan is proposing, and is still, in my mind anyway, an outstanding resolution of council.
Take that as a statement for the director to respond to. Further questions without notice, Councillor Barnett. You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, I thought I'd done it. Anyway, following up on Councillor Mark Groot's line of questioning, would it be possible for the City of Prospect or inner metro city councils, the RAA, LGA, somebody to have some education sessions for drivers, particularly on the rules that we're coming across in many of our streets, and such as the Tianu situation?
Thank you. CEO.
So, Councillor, just to understand your, sorry, I'll just put my, so just to understand your, you'd like a coordinated approach. I'm just trying to clarify your question.
To driver education, I think that's the next crux of the question, wasn't it? Yes, through RAA or whoever, LGA, whoever.
It's certainly something we could raise through Garrock to the LGA, and very happy to do that. It's a very broad issue, as you know, that covers, as you point out, many agencies. Certainly take that on notice and see what we can come back with, Councillor.
Thank you. Any further questions without notice? No? Okay, we'll move on to item 10, which is reports for decision. We have quite a few. On 10.1 is the petition and the matter of parking in Tianu Avenue and Wilson Street. Consultation results, recommendations on pages 1 and 2. I was asked before to take it in parts. I now confirm that I will take it in parts. So if I forget, remind me, because this might need a bit of discussion. And I'm interested in whether there are a number of questions and people would appreciate suspending meeting procedures to allow that. A few nods would work. Okay, so put to the meeting to suspend meeting procedures until 8 p.m. should we need it. All those in favour? Against? It is carried and they're thus suspended until 8 p.m. Does anybody have a question for starters? The report's fairly detailed. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to, I guess, the Director, maybe. Just a question on how we normally would read the results from the survey. We have 10 people out of 40. Sorry, we had 40 letters posted. I'm getting to a question, just in case you're wondering. 40 letters posted. We had 17 responses, and 10 of those responses were in favour of no standing restrictions. So on that basis, you might consider it a majority. But would we normally consider the number of votes in favour of something or other in the context of the entire number of letters sent out? Because if that's the case, then it's not a majority by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm just looking for a clarification on that point, please.
Yeah, okay. CEO?
Yes, if I can refer that again to the Director, please, Chair.
Yep. Thank you, Director.
Sure. It's horses for courses in this sense, because if, for example, a Broadview Oval consultation, we might go out to 500 metre radius, which might mean many hundreds of letters may go out. We wouldn't normally expect necessarily a high rate of percentage of return. There's no, as part of our consultation policy, there's no written rule about how many responses you should receive before you consider it to be a valid response rate. As you said, we sent out 40, we got 17 back. So we've made a decision, or we've made a recommendation based on those 17 responses. The Mayor brought to our attention maybe in the past that we may have considered the 23 that didn't respond. You consider them to be a no vote, but on this occasion we haven't considered that.
Okay, thank you. A question from Councillor Grigg.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I had two questions. The first one along the same lines, and I'll save the rest of that commentary until debate. But I did have a question just in terms of moving the traffic signs outside the corner of TNU and Prospect Road, not the Blackfriars side, but the other side. Did we consult with the businesses in there before we did that? Because I'm aware they have recently advocated, and I thought the parking restrictions had been increased there, and we've now decreased parking outside the shops. So I'm just checking whether we had consulted with those businesses at all.
Thank you.
Attachment 5 on page 12 is the letter that we sent regarding the relocation of that sign.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I had a few concerns. Now, I rang and double checked to find out that TNU is in fact to narrow streets. Now, we do have a narrow streets policy, and a lot of the recommendations actually contradict what our narrow streets policy says. And I'd like to actually table it as part of our discussions. So on the I've got it up on my screen, but I can't share it, unfortunately. But they may be able to from your side. But in the last page of the narrow streets policy, it's got a very clear flow diagram that says 3 inspections by community safety officers of street at 2-month intervals over a 6-month period to assess compliance. And I don't know if that was done. And then when it goes to consultation, it's clearly about staggered parking restrictions, not all in. We have a policy. Was the policy?
Okay, thank you. That broke up at my end, but you're asking, we've got a narrow streets policy. Was it adhered to? It appears not from the things you've read out. Is that essentially it? Yeah, thank you. Director?
I've got a response here, which I'll read out. Council's narrow street policy and procedure defines a narrow street as a street that has a section less than 7 metres in width between adjacent curbs. Therefore, all of Tiano Avenue, except for a small section of the Blackfriars Primary School, is considered a narrow street. The policy was introduced to address the issues of car parking directly opposite each other in narrow streets, which results in vehicles being unable to travel along the street. It simply requires the complainant to include the nature of the issue, the peak times, the day when the issue is occurring, and the location. The petition we received by Jack Condis has requested that Council modify and extend the current no standing restrictions along Tiana Avenue in response to the issues and concerns around excessive traffic volumes and speed, as well as increased parking occupancy, perceived safety issues, and lack of parking for residents and their visitors. So based on this, the report focuses on the traffic volume, speed, and safety issues, while undertaking a consultation with the proposed changes to parking restrictions.
Thank you. Good question, Councillor De Backer. Are there any other questions of staff before I pull us back in a formal session? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This may be a difficult question to answer, but I'll ask it anyway. I believe in here somewhere that it talks about a permit system through which visitors may be required to seek a permit to essentially park contrary to the rules. Do we have other streets where this type of system is operating? And if we do, is there, it would be probably more anecdotal than anything, is there any concept of that being quite a burdensome task that council administration have to perform, which, you know, obviously introduces additional costs of operating and those kind of things like that. So there is a question.
Thank you, Director.
We're not recommending any permit system at all due to the ambiguity around our permit system at the moment. So we're not recommending that at all. So we're not recommending that. I'm not personally aware of it happening anywhere else in the city, but me being relatively new, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Can I just ask from the chair about permits? There was a request by the petitioner to allow permits for the north side residents. Director, how, if we did decide to have permits, which we generally don't allow permits, if we did decide to allow permits for the north side residents, what would they do if there was a car parked opposite them?
Good question.
So they have a permit to park at the front of the house, but someone's parked on the south side of the street. What do we do? And should they park there, who gets the fine for not allowing 3 metre separation?
That's a good question. No matter what, under Australian road rules, you have to maintain that separation. I don't have an answer to that, I'm sorry. If
that's
they...
right. It wasn't a trick question. I just thought, how, anyway.
Yeah.
Any further questions? If not, I'll pull us back into formal session. So now we have item 10.1 before us. We have a recommendation in 7 parts. I said I'll take them in parts. Is someone happy to move it to get it on the floor? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
Briefly, I'm more interested in what the other elected members have to say. But from my perspective, I'm not in favour of introducing a no parking side to an entire street. I think that has the potential to introduce more problems than it solves, and has the potential to
Sorry, just frozen there, Deputy Mayor. This isn't good, is it? Who else is on this internet thing at the moment?
introduce more safety concerns. Who's on the NBN? It's working beautifully. Okay, so I'm not sure at what point I froze, but I was just discussing the fact that I feel like introducing no parking along one side of a street would increase the likelihood of accidents, and given that we don't seem to have had a significant amount of accidents reported with regards to, you know, mirrors and people being hurt and those kind of things like that, I don't think I'll be supporting that particular motion. I think that some of the other parts of the motion are very easy to support. I also do think that there's a couple of concerns with the consultation process. If we only went out asking one question, as it says at the top of page 3, the following parking restriction changes will be consulted with the community. We've only given them one option, and to me that's very leading. And I think that I'm not an expert at constructing consultation processes, but we could have given our residents a couple of options to consider so they could weigh up the pros and cons of a couple of different solutions. So I think there's a bit of a flaw in that part of the process as well. But interested to hear what everybody else has to say with regards to the various aspects of the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it? Sorry, you're on mute there, Councillor. You're on mute. There we go.
All right now.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm just doing it, but to get seeing it's been moved, but I'm not in favour of part 2, and I'm only really in favour of the others that are the yeah. So my main concern is that as I indicated in my question without notice, is that a lot of this, we have this in other streets. I note, say, Rose Street in particular, and we've had streets closed off with buildings being done on them. So I do think that it's a matter of people, a lot of people seem to be not aware of the actual law. And be it that some of the laws may have changed since many people most probably got their driver's licence, but nevertheless, as drivers, we are expected to know the law. So therefore, I think that a lot, and I'm just wondering whether I thank Councillor De Backer for bringing up the point about our narrow street policy and Tianu, or part of it being included. But do we have increased parking or inspection of traffic when we know that there are streets like Tianu, when they had 3 places being built all roughly about the same time? So I just have a question to put. So do we increase our inspection when that happens?
I'll take the question. Director, I presume.
Through the chair. Not necessarily, we increase our inspection regimes, not necessarily when there's development going on, but when it's these sort of issues are brought to our attention via petitions or letters, we will increase zones. We have obviously a limited amount of resources when it comes to our inspectors, but they do tend to move around to hotspots throughout the city.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, well, that may be perhaps a discussion for another workshop when we actually have about traffic management throughout our city. Perhaps if we can get that onto a workshop soon to be able to discuss these sorts of matters. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Groot, I think, was next, and then Councillor De Backer.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, this isn't absolutely one of those wicked problems. I've no doubt about that. But I just want to make a couple of comments. One, just in terms of the consultation, can I just double check with the director? The consultation only went to Tianu Street residents, not to Wilson Street. Is that correct?
Director.
Through the chair, that's correct. We didn't leave it to an issue on Wilson Street.
Thank you. Councillor.
Sorry, I might have just missed that. It was only Tianu, it wasn't Wilson?
Yes, only Tianu. Wilson.
Thank you. So going back to the numbers again, I did just want to prosecute this for a minute. We had 40 letters posted, so I presume 40 households on the street, and 10 of those, which is 25%, supported the no staying restrictions. If we go back to the policy, and thank you, Councillor De Backer, who raised this earlier, and I'm sure we've all read this before tonight, but it does say 50% of street residents in favour. Now, that doesn't say 50% of people who responded to a survey. It actually says 50% of street residents. So there's a nuance for us when we're out canvassing people's views. Our policy requires 50% of street residents. Now, I take that as street households, not necessarily every single resident, but based on the numbers purely, 10 out of 40 is 25%, not 50. So from a policy perspective, it doesn't actually meet the requirement or the threshold to make any change. The second comment I was going to make was I, in the past, have advocated very strongly, or not strongly, I've advocated in the past around no standing on one side of the road. And what over 10 years of council, I've been told repeatedly, is that what that does is creates a gun barrel effect where people have got this lovely sort of area to drive through and actually increases speeds, not decreases it. And I have accepted that. I've accepted the argument and the science behind that. And so I won't support any measures that do that in any narrow street, because I think we're creating more problems. And to one of the deputies' points, having staggered parking actually does reduce speed in a street. I think that makes sense. So I won't be in support of recommendation 2 in the motion. The third one around yellow line markings, I have a very different view to maybe what is council or regional policy, and I'll bring this up in another time, another place, I guess. But I don't think we should not be replacing yellow lines. I know they're not the prettiest things, but they do actually have an effect. And so, notwithstanding that the road rules do say you can't park within a certain meterage of the driveway, having the yellow lines reinforces that notion. And I know that we put yellow lines all around the city where there is traffic hotspots. I don't think we should do it everywhere, but where there's a need to, and the need might be in this street, we really should be doing that. So I heard the comment before from the director, and I think there's scope for us to maybe revisit that. And as I said, I'll bring that up at another time. So look, it is an issue. There is obviously narrow street has traffic issues inherently, but I can't support a one-sided street treatment. Again, going back to my earlier comment around discussions on traffic management, this could have been part of that conversation a while ago. So I would encourage us to have that conversation sooner than later.
1 minute if you need it.
I won't need it, but I just want to say thank you to the director. I'm sorry, I hadn't picked up the consultation with the businesses. I, for some reason, hadn't retained that bit of information. So thank you for doing that, because I think that is an important part of our consultation process too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor De Backer and then Councillor Rip.
Yeah, look, thank you first to the deputies and petitioners to bring it to our attention, and certainly I think all the councillors are aware of the traffic issues in and around schools, and certainly with the increased density throughout the whole city. Just a reminder that we do make, and a bit like Councillor Group was commenting, we do make decisions for the whole city and precincts. So if we look at roads in isolation, you may get people parking on the next road round and you create another problem, a bit like the traffic device. You might have solved one problem, create another problem, which is why the local area and the precinct planning is really important. So I'm not going to be supporting points 2 or point 2, because I just felt that the administration didn't follow the policy. We do have a clear policy about managing traffic streets. And again, it's about equity. So you want to make sure, the narrow street in Allen Street, for example, and you might have Kane Street or another narrow street, that they're all getting the same service level across the whole city. And that's why we need to have strong policies and use them. And also, it takes council time and officers' time. There's a policy there, and I think probably this is a comment to the CEO. We need to make sure that we're using them because councils endorse them. There's always room for improvement. We get that, that's fine. As to point 3, look, again, because it's administrative, I'm not going to support point 3 regarding the yellow line marking. I actually think it's a service level. So I'd say strongly to both of the deputies that were interested in this space. Look, council has a budget every year and we spend money on various things for our city. Now, yellow lines is maybe not something we're prioritising. However, it's a service level that maybe you get in other councils. So it's kind of going, okay, what do we not pay for and what could we pay for? We've got 220 kilometres of road. Mayor Lachlan might know exactly, but I did it was about the distance from here to Borough or something. So we have a lot of roads. So the expectation that we can yellow mark all our roads and keep them up to date at all times is a big service level. And as part of the local area traffic management planning, I think it would be really good to cost that so that our residents are aware what the cost implications would be as far as rates go. So appreciate the discussion, but I won't be supporting points 2 and 3, and I look forward to discussions on the wider, bigger picture discussions.
Thank you. I didn't want to unnecessarily interrupt you. We have about 220 streets. They're not all a kilometre long, so we have less kilometrage than that. I think it's about 90, something like that. But you can put that question through to get the fine detail if you like. Councillor Rip.
Can I just check if I'm coming through properly?
Perfectly.
Great, thanks. Look, similar to other people, I won't take up too long. I won't be supporting point 2 either, due to previous comments raised. And also, I'm really disappointed in the recommendation on point 3 due to the comments raised as well. I think just because something's a standard, if it's an average standard, at Prospect we pride ourselves on being above and beyond and being creative and innovative. And I think having yellow line marks keeping yellow line markings up to date and addressing new areas for line marking where it's identified it's a potential safety issue or it's identified where there's complaints, I think would be silly not to do it. So I think just because it's a road standard, that doesn't mean that it's the best it can be. And maybe we could actually set a new standard as well for what we want in our city. So I won't be supporting points 2 and point 3.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Pearce and then Councillor Nguyen.
Yes, look, I think it's all been said, and I totally agree. I really do believe that the restrictions were extreme, and so I won't be supporting 2. And I echo the thoughts of the previous speakers on the yellow line marking. I'd encourage that.
That's all, Councillor.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. That's it.
So on the weekend, on Sunday in particular, I went down to Tianu Avenue and I spoke to 7 different households, all living along the northern side of the street. And I asked them about their views about the parking and the traffic situation. Some of the comments that I noted down were, I thought that the residents could apply for an exemption. If this is not the case, please keep it as it is. Another comment was, I will not be happy with the no standing parking restriction on either side of the road because I am concerned about the potential speed increase. It will be more dangerous than what it is now. At least now drivers have to slow down if cars were parked on either side of the road. Another resident said that the southern side of the road the southern side of the road, the residents living on there will also have problems too, because the visitors on the northern side would then have to park on the southern side. So that will impact them as well. Another resident said, my mother would prefer the no parking restriction on the southern side of Tianu Avenue because it will be easier for her to reverse out of her driveway. Hence, the yellow line marking will help with that. Then somebody said to me that I wasn't aware of the no standing parking restriction meant that no parking 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Parking is not a problem parking is only a problem during the school period. We bought our home knowing that there's a school up the road, so we expect some parking during school hours by students and staff. In the late evening, afternoons, and on the weekends, there's not a parking traffic issue at all. I have a question. Do we know that do we know that Blackfriars whether they have any intention of increasing their on-site parking for their student staff and any visitors there? Because that would somehow reduce the flow of traffic coming down to that street.
I think it says in the report that they don't have any intention, but Director, can you clarify that for us?
To the Chair, no, that's correct. I don't have any issue. Thank you.
They don't have any intention to provide student parking. I think that was how it was expressed.
Oh, sorry. No, that's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah. I wish on the weekend I had door knocked some of the households on the southern side to get their views as well, but I didn't get a chance to do that. But having listened to some of the comments, some of the feedback from the residents living on the northern side and how much this would impact them, I won't be supporting the recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Everybody has spoken on the floor for my records. So, Councillor Deputy Mayor, if you wish to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks everybody for their contributions. I do not see the need to rehash what everyone has said. There seems to be a fair consistency with where we might be voting. I will, though, pass on some feedback from a resident of that street that I've just received. And it says, we wish to withdraw support for parking change given there are no permits on offer. So to me, it's pretty clear that there may have been, well, I won't say what I was going to say, but anyway, that's fairly clear. They also said that they did not think consultation was thorough enough, which is disappointing because we've done really well with consultation recently. So probably an opportunity for a bit of reflection there. But yeah, to sum up, thanks everybody for their contribution, and let's have a vote.
God, thank you very much for reminding me of my job. That concludes debate. I've said I'll take it in parts, and I will. All those in favour of part 1? All those against part 1? Part 1 is carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 2? All those against part 2? Part 2 is lost unanimously. All those in favour of part 3? All those against part 3? Part 3 is lost unanimously. All those in favour of part 4? All those against part 4? Part 4 is carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 5? All those against part 5? Part 5 is carried unanimously. Part 6, all those in favour of part 6? Carried unanimously. No one against. All those in favour of part 7? Again, I can see all hands carried unanimously, no one against. Thank you. That concludes, for those of you observing tonight regarding the item about parking in Tarnu and Wilson, that concludes that matter tonight. There'll be no further discussion of that matter. So you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting, but we'd understand if you wish to take a break and get back to normal transmission, I could put it. Thank you, elected members. We'll now move on to item 10.2. Community consultation results, section 221 application for 60 Belford Avenue Prospect. The recommendations on page 18. Does somebody wish to move it in its current form? Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it? Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor.
Look, I think it's a great consultation. I think this shows a level of support, maybe unexpected support for activation at street level. Certainly, I think the comments were quite insightful in regards to some of the concerns as well about the design and, you know, use in the evening and that kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to discussion. But I think we've had a lot of I guess, planning for an activation on Prospect Road. And I think this really shows how some of the development and Churchill Road and down that way is coming into its own. We really wanted to encourage passive surveillance, activation in and around what was a kind of quiet, slightly run down area, but I guess now with Devonport Terrace development and some money being spent down there, and the work at the park with some really exciting things happening. It's also an attractor. I think, you know, other developments will look at this as a kind of, oh, there's a coffee shop around the corner, maybe I'll, you know, do a development here, because it certainly is something that people consider as is having a, you know, coffee shop or an active space around the corner. I'd be really interested in people's thoughts and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? The Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of questions first of all, if I may.
Sure.
First question is, given that the current tenant of that location, Frankly Bagels, will absorb the cost of element of cost, what happens if they move out, if that site becomes an office or is vacant for a period of time or is taken over by someone else who doesn't see the benefit of that? Who's the cost of doing anything under that sort of circumstance? And the second part of the same question is that I'm assuming that council is picking up the cost for the ongoing maintenance under, no matter whether it's Frankly Bagels or other owners.
So 2 questions. CEO.
That's correct. Through you, Chair, we will while the business is in operation, they will carry the cost. But should they go out of operation, that would fall back to the council.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, does that answer your two questions?
It does. I have a further one, if I may. Given that we're creating an interface between that location and the park, it's natural that there will be a lot more pedestrian traffic, I would say, going back and forth. There is already an increase. Have we given any consideration to how we might deal with safely getting pedestrians across that road? Because there's been a significant number of accidents reported over the last 5-year period, for example. We haven't had a fantastic bagel shop on that site, and I've noticed it firsthand, sort of chicken run stuff going on. So have we given any consideration to including that as part of this upgrade?
CEO?
Can I refer that, Chair, through you to the Director?
Sure.
Through the Chair, we haven't considered creating any new crossing, like a pedestrian crossing at this section at this stage. The Wombat crossing, which is currently there, is the raised plateau. Sometimes can be a hindrance to pedestrians. Sometimes it can be an advantage. Unfortunately, some people believe that it's a pedestrian crossing as it is and walks across, and cars don't necessarily see that, so there can be conflict between pedestrians and cars. Other times, cars would address a Wombat crossing and slow down, thinking that it is a pedestrian crossing, so that would slow the traffic as well. We will continue to monitor. It is an option to install a pedestrian crossing there in the future if we deem that's suitable.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, any further questions?
No further questions, thank you.
Do you wish to speak further to the motion?
Yes, please. Look, I agree with Councillor De Backer. I think there are a smallish percentage of people who are not super happy with this decision. This is exactly the type of thing that our council should be supporting where possible. There's a cost involved, sure, but we are about activation. We are about bringing life to areas that haven't had as much attention in the past as what they would have done. And I think this will become, again, as Councillor De Backer mentioned, an exemplar to other developers who see the benefit of potentially including ground level businesses at the bottom of apartment dwellings, so they can activate the space. And I think it'll have a net benefit of increasing the value, not only to the residents of the building, but also the local area. So I'm strongly in favour of this motion.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Barnett. Just take yourself off mute.
Every time.
There we go.
It's just the opposite to what it says, actually. Anyway, yeah, I just think that the survey actually raised quite a few, points, and particularly some more questions. And I guess this is why I was a bit hesitant before when this proposal came to us, that we just seemed to be going gung-ho straight into it. But nevertheless, we have done that. And so I have got some questions. So one from the survey or response was, how can the parklet be used when the cafe is not open? So that was one.
I'll take them one at a time, Councillor, if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
CEO?
Yes, through you, Chair, again to the Director, Mayor.
Director?
The proposed parklet has a combination of inbuilt seating and benches, as well as temporary benches. So I'd imagine after hours, the temporary seating and furniture would be taken inside, but there is permanent outdoor bench seating which can be used by the public at any time at their leisure.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And who owns the parklet?
Thank you. CEO, Director again.
Please.
Through the Chair, once constructed, the asset becomes the City of Prospects, and it's up to us to ensure that it's safe and fit for purpose.
Right, thank you. Yes, all right, thank you. So there are other questions, I think, that most probably the administration that were raised in the survey that most probably won't take up any more of our time there, but hope they will be looked at. Some of it is actually regarding the Frankly Bagels operations. So that might be over to our planning. I think some of it goes to about control of rubbish and space to store things. Anyway, I won't take up our time here tonight over that. But I might add after I and a few others did meet with residents on site on the 31st of October. And it was interesting, and I thank the council's parking inspector and his legal knowledge, because he came up and politely pointed out to some people that were there, including in our meeting, that their cars were illegally parked on the north side of Belford Avenue because they were parked adjacent to a solid white line in the middle of the road, to the length of the solid white line. So that meant effectively that there were not 4 car park spaces, as what people were led to believe, but only 2 or 3 car park. So and another resident who lives there, well, the parking inspector was there, says that the resident parks his car there most times, he lives there, and he usually takes up 2 car park spaces, you know, straddles them. And again, council's parking inspector said that this was illegal as well. So that's why I'm quite keen to get some education program out there, because, you know, I don't think many of us are aware of a lot of these things. And on various times that I've been there, I've observed that most cars travelling in both directions don't appear to be slowed down by that raised road plateau. So I would really query its effectiveness if it was put there as a speed deterrent. And I was also pleased that to get feedback from our director, Simon, that we can use a pedestrian warning sign there. So hopefully that will go some way for pedestrian safety there. But I think that's something that we do really need to look at, particularly as we're going to be increasing a lot of the use there, not only with the cafe and the apartment building, but also with the other improvements that we're doing there. So, and also that we're going to be getting some additional fixed park benches on the Cane Reserve side as part of all of that. So again, I just think that it's an example. We had a developer who said, oh, you know, they're going to pay for everything and all that. But now we find out that we're actually going to be left with it forever, or as long as it's there. I'm not against parklets and some innovative things that are happening. But I guess I'm just saying that we really shouldn't be just jumping full bore into these things. And I think perhaps next time we need to stop and have a workshop on it would have helped, I think. The other thing is about the yellow parking lines, that if we could clearly delineate by having the yellow parking spaces there, I think also that would help assist people parking there.
1 minute.
Yes, and I think that one of the better examples I found is with the issues that Milner Street residents had around the Orthodox Church there. And as soon as the yellow car parking spaces were put there to show people where they should actually be parking, help seems to have alleviated a lot of that. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Rip and then Groot.
Yeah, look, I'll be supporting the recommendations tonight. I think this will lead to good activation and vibrancy of the area. I would also like to see something like this put outside the Dulwich Bakery as part of Collinswood Stage 2 to activate that space. And you know, there'll be a number of residents really excited about that. There'll be a couple, because we're going to that type of activation will bring more people. Again, that could have some impact on the streets. But you know, I think overall the community wins when you've got an active and vibrant area. I think it's visually appealing to make that type of centre down at Collinswood really attractive. So for our community, so I'm very happy to support this type of thing. I would also like to know, I was actually comfortable with the process with this. I think we took it out to the community consultation, which I'm really glad we gave the community a chance to have a say. And I would also say for the street that's probably going to be, if you want to say, most impacted, Belford Avenue, 6 supporting it and 8 being against it is not a ringing endorsement of the street being against it. So I'm actually, it makes me even more comfortable to support it. We'll listen to other people, obviously, as part of this, but from what I've heard so far, I'm comfortable with the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Groot.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I just want to, I will be supporting the motion tonight. I just want to say probably something similar to what I said in an earlier discussion tonight around the consultation. So we had a 17% return rate of 195 surveys, 22% of respondents supported the proposed parklet, which is 67%, that's correct, but it's actually 11% of all the surveys. So my decision tonight isn't based on the community consultation at all, because I just don't think it's reliable enough to make a really informed decision. I agree with the comments made earlier by some of the other elected members that this is a great activation. We should be doing more of this. I think of the coffee shop outside of on Gloucester Street. There's a couple of others popping up around the place. We should kind of almost think about this as being a template. And if we get it right, almost an exemplar of what we can do in some other places and activate those coffee shops. I'd like to think if Frankly Bagels isn't there in the future, someone else will be and they'll utilise it. But I also see this as an asset that's being provided to the City of Prospect. And for the sake of some maintenance over the longer term, I think it's a nice price to pay for activation. I accept the views about parking, and I also accept the views that a number of the respondents that were negative towards this proposal lived in the building, and I kind of really get that. I think there is lots of parking in that vicinity. So for those that don't have a car park in the actual building, within 20, 30 metres, there's car parks along the train lines. I think there is those opportunities as well. But look, I'll be supporting the motion. I think it's a great idea, but I'm not basing my decision tonight on the community consultation, because I just don't think, and it's no fault of anyone's, it's just that this is, these are very low numbers, and we need to probably think from a policy perspective how we really engage in a different way to engage people and hear what they have to say, or we make some assumptions that if we don't hear from people, they're quite happy with what we're asking. Anyway, that's for another time, but I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Nguyen. Just take yourself off mute. Here we go.
Thanks, Mayor. Now, I did send Jessica some photos, Jessica, if you don't mind. I often go to the Boat Deck Cafe down at Mawson Lakes. So they've got, if you can skip through that one, Jess, not that one. Yep, maybe the next one. Yep. So Boat Deck Cafe in Mawson Lakes, they've got tables and chairs outside their shops, and across the road they've also got a pedestrian crossing there. So they utilise this area directly opposite a river, and it looks great and it works well. These are temporary tables and chairs, and the restaurant brings the tables and chairs in. It's activation. It's not cutting into, we're not losing car parks or expenses like that. So my suggestion, if we could, can you go to the next one, Jess? So I was at the next one, Jess. I was at Charles Keynes Reserve and I took some photos. So that's the view. They've got a beautiful asset directly in front of them, Charles Keynes Reserve. Where I've marked those 2 red dots there, what about a few tables and chairs there? I think this will be, it's still activation. We're not losing car parks, and I think the patrons, whoever having coffee there, if there's children there to come over to this side of the road and use this park, I think that will work really well. I'm not against the parklet, but what about, have we thought about disability access? You know, we just had, you know, policy. We just had the Mayor's Disability Forum, and you know, we spoke to some of our community members who have, you know, mobility issues. Have we considered all that if we were to implement that suggestion?
Okay, thank you. You're finished, Councillor?
Yes.
Yep, Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I'm probably wasting my breath here by the sounds of it, but anyway, I'll go ahead. I agree with, I'm glad Councillor Groot mentioned that we can't rely on the consultation on this basis. I think 17% is statistically an unacceptable response rate. I also disagree with the consultation. I'm not quite sure why we wouldn't just canvass Belford Avenue, where that is the main concern. Going out 200 metres really doesn't cut it for me. It might as well go out 500 metres or ask someone on Main North Road. Let's face it, we all agree. I think that placemaking is to be encouraged in Prospect. There's no one against that. But it has to be judged against the impacts. And in this circumstance, the impacts are enormous for traffic, for safety, and for parking. And the advantage of the Parklet hardly weighs up against those three, in my opinion. I requested the director to give me the survey responses. I think you all would have received them as well. The main purpose of that was to have a look at what people were actually saying. Now, the statistics are flawed. Of people supporting it, 4 people from the apartments make it conditional. Now, that can't be a yes, because they're asking for it to support it on the basis they get a new roller door. Now, history shows this developer won't be paying another $30,000 for a new roller door. So I'm not quite sure why those 4 people were in the yes side. But as Councillor Groot said, I don't think the consultation doesn't really matter. I think the main thing, looking at those survey responses, what I wanted to see was a number of the large replies were from people not supporting it. And it said it went to trim, which we couldn't access. If you look at the comments that support it, they're very flippant. I mean, the comments are like, can we look at online voting system? Can we look at blocking one side of Myrtle Street parking? They're not even referring to what this survey is about. So 6 or 7 other people just said, great idea. Now, again, it's a great idea, and we want placemaking, and this would be a great idea, but not in this location. I don't want to be sitting there next to a bollard with a big truck parked next to me with fumes coming out. I can't see excitement in that. So it's not the right place for this parklet. I want parklets, but this is ridiculous. And again, a number of the people in the apartments have concerns with the storage already, the waste disposal already. They're going to increase security, and again, this roller door factor. The completion of the park upgrade across the road, which is going to be great, that will only increase the traffic and the parking and the safety. And Deputy Mayor would attest to the fact that on weekends, people say there's lots of parks there. Go there on a weekend, you won't find a park. All the parks along Davenport Terrace are taken, all the parks in Elizabeth Street taken, all the parks in Belford Street are taken. So this is just going to increase the problem. But anyway, final comment I want to make, I had a resident ring me today, contacted me regarding allowing this developer this privilege, particularly when the compliance issues with the building are being ignored. They thought that was a bit of a disgrace. I just thought I'd raise that at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes debate. Councillor De Backer, do you wish to sum up?
I do. Look, there's been some really interesting debate and some very interesting points, and I probably just want to highlight maybe some of the things that Councillor Pearce had made. And I really want to separate this activation and unique activation from the developer and the development. I think they're 2 very separate issues. And as far as the type of responses, I think people vote with their feet. We can kind of see the popularity of that spot, and I'm certain that sort of Mayor Lachlan can attest to the fact that the hero, I guess, tenant on Prospect Road for a long time, and probably still is Marathis. And for a long time, they didn't even get the point of outdoor. And now it's kind of a sort of hero location, and a lot of Prospect Road has sort of grown around it. So if you think about Queen Street and Croydon, which is adjacent a train line, you know, there's a big coffee culture there. And it is a bit brave because people look at car parks, but I think it's one of these things we are sort of, you know, not necessarily inner city, but in a metro. And we're trying to, I guess, create places for people over cars. And I think that's something that's seen as best practice in placemaking and urban design. So though it is a brave choice, I'd encourage people to support the motion. And I'm sure through the design process in consultation, you know, with, I guess, traffic management, the businesses and the residents, we can get a design that suits everyone's needs. So I'd encourage you to support the motion.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the process. All those in favour? 2, 3. All those against? 2, 3. It is carried. Okay, that concludes that item. Item 10.3, Prospect Broadview Bowling Club roof replacement. Recommendations on page 28. Councillor Ripp, you wish to move it?
Yes, I do, please. Thank you. Yeah, look, and I'm sure Councillor Harris will attest, I know I have personally been contacted a number of times and had conversations with the club. They've stressed to me that this is an ongoing issue in terms of their roof, in terms of what's in the report, in terms of leakages and damages and the ongoing issues experienced for the club. So I would like to add my support behind the club having the roof replaced, and I do encourage, keen to hear what others think. And the mayor, I believe, the mayor too was down. I think we did a tour. I've forgotten the event, but I know we've been down there together and had a look at different elements of that. But I know that the club are very concerned and have been in regular conversations with the staff in the background to this as well.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I've got a question.
I'll take a brief question before I get a seconder. Councillor Backer.
Yeah, I might be mistaken, but I was reading perhaps there's like an asset management plan coming to us next month, and I was just wondering if sort of maintenance was part of that, because I'm just trying to get an idea across all our venues and all our facilities, priority of.
I'll take that question. CEO.
Thank you, Chair. I might have to refer that one as well to the Director. I know we're in the process of looking at asset management plans. Simon?
Through the Chair, yes. We'll be going out to consultation on our draft asset management plan shortly. One of the categories of asset management plans is buildings, which identifies building maintenance. We currently have an allocation allocated annually, but that's been more of a finger in the air estimation. This asset management plan will provide more direction in terms of upgrades and renewals of our building assets.
Okay. Councillor, do you wish to second the motion?
Not at this stage, no.
Do I have another seconder? Do I have a seconder, not another one? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Now,
there we go.
Hear me? Right. Yes, I'll second it. I think it's, as being pointed out, it's been an ongoing situation. It's getting to the point now where it's perhaps, a safety issue. And I think if we're, it looks like it's not going to have to be replaced in all the different, our master plan for the area. So I just say, look, bite the bullet and let's go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Groot.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to refer to a question about where this is being funded from. There is a thing in the there is a comment in the papers saying that the funding for the project would be delivered through savings achieved for other infrastructure projects currently being delivered at Broadview Oval. So can I just get an explanation about how we're saving $85,000 on other infrastructure projects and what they might be?
Thank you, Director. I'll proceed.
Through the chair, that comment should be more reflected about our entire capital works program rather than specifically detailing, referencing projects at Broadview Oval. Yes, we have a major project there in terms of a playground and dog park upgrade. We have identified some savings. If council resolves to proceed with the replacement, we'll be bringing back at either the second quarter budget review or the third quarter budget review, hopefully some identified savings as part of our capital works program that would help fund this project.
Thank you. So look, I'm absolutely supportive of this. It clearly needs to be done. However, I'm not going to support it tonight until the budget review has been done, because I just can't, I don't have visibility about where the money's coming from. And I don't think I can in good faith approve $85,000 effectively without understanding the impacts on other infrastructure budgets. So absolutely agree with it. We need to do it. I'll support it being done once we've got the budget reforecast come through on it.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, similar thoughts to Councillor Grew. I think it's definitely a worthy cause, but I just wanted to see it on par with all the other projects we've got. And if it's savings, is that service level lost? Is it plants that are not being planted, or things that haven't been higher spec'd, or things that aren't being done or could be done? So I think that transparency issue. So if we're taking it in parts of support point 1, but not point 2 at this point, but certainly encouraging to support it at another point where we've got all the information in front of us.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I agree with the previous two speakers. It is too vague to say that the money will come from somewhere, and we have a budgeting process for a reason, and we spend an excruciatingly large amount of time going through every aspect of that budgeting process, and we come up with a plan which we all agree reflects the priorities. Now things do change. From time to time. However, I wouldn't really like us to get into the habit of simply pushing forward a project. I'm sure the team can come back to us fairly quickly with a more detailed response, given that we may be heading into a period of relative sunniness and relative lack of raininess. It is a risk that there will still be leaks and those kind of things like that. But yeah, I'd be keen to see the team come back with something a little bit more concrete for us to consider. Definitely support the need for it, but just a little bit more scrutiny around where the money.
Speakers, definitely needs to be done, but it'll be good to see where we get the resources from.
Thank you. Just from the chair, there's some interesting points made about process, and it does remind me of another club that needed a new roof, and the extent they went to lobby us and to turn up at meetings during a budget bid process, which was ultimately successful. I was very reluctant to replace that roof, but their advocacy convinced me otherwise, because their roof we all want to demolish. This roof we don't, so I'm more comfortable with maintaining this, and it's in a good state, and it's our responsibility as the landlord. But I do agree with the comments made around process, and it would have been better if item 2 said endorse it to be considered as a budget bid. So I don't get a vote tonight unless one of you leaves the desert island that you're on, or the street that you're parked next to, or whatever you might be. But that's kind of my view around process. Certainly worthy, but how we do that is a question. I do have a real question though, and that is the current roof is terracotta tiles, and I like my architecture and my architectural history. It's a cream brick building with a red brick roof, very popular style, quite an attractive building in the sense. The report says replace it with tin, which in my view would be a lesser finish. I'm not sure, CEO Director, if you can help me understand, is there a cost issue in it being replaced like for like with tiles?
Again, Chair, through you to the Director.
Through the Chair, I made some inquiries after you raised that issue with us earlier, Mayor, and unfortunately we don't have a price for terracotta tiles replacement. So I can't give you a price difference at this stage between the colour bond and the tiles, but something we would investigate as part of the next process.
Okay, thank you. That would be appreciated. I understand on new homes, tin versus tiles is a very similar cost, but that also takes into account the roof structure. So I don't know what it is for a re-roof. So at this stage, they're my comments. I think it's worthy, but whether it's right now, whether it's subject to finding some money, but we've got plenty of things to spend money on, or whether it comes up as a budget bid, they're all very, very good questions. Are there further speakers to this item? There being no further speakers, Councillor Ripp, you wish to sum up.
Yeah. Look, thanks for the comments tonight, and happy with all that was said. I would like to ask a question though about particularly process with the council of who checks off our agendas and minutes, and who checks off the reports for accuracy. And I thank Councillor Group for his question. It does state here, additional quotes would be required prior to the award of the project, and the funding for the project would be provided through savings achieved, including or currently being delivered at Broadview Oval. Who checks the accuracy of the reports before they're submitted? Because this is clearly inaccurate.
I can't take a question during a summing up, Councillor. You can only sum.
Well, I'll just leave that as a statement then, because I mean, we're obviously basing decisions upon these type of things, and we know in a future item we've got coming up with the annual report, there's also a few discrepancies. So I've just encouraged all directors to actually help each other out with this. It's not just one director's responsibility; it's everyone's to make sure these reports are accurate, please.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Sorry. Sorry, there was an indication that people were more inclined to support one part or the other part. I'll take that as a question to take it in parts. I'll now take it in parts. All those in favour of part one? That is carried unanimously. No one against. All those in favour of part two? All those against part two? Part two is lost unanimously. Thank you. Okay, on to item 10.4. The appointment of Deputy Mayor. I'd like to suspend meeting procedures to see if there are any nominations. And it's 8:47, so I'd like to suspend meeting procedures until 9 p.m. should we need it. I don't think we will. All those in favour? Against? That is carried and they're thus suspended. Are there any nominees? Are there any nominations? Sorry, Councillor Group.
Yes, I would like to nominate Councillor Larwood to the position of Deputy Mayor for a period of 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Larwood. Councillor Larwood, I haven't called you Councillor Larwood since the last time I forgot to call you Deputy Mayor. Are you happy to accept that nomination?
I would like to thank the former Deputy Mayor, Mark Groot, for the nomination then, and I'm happy to accept for a period of time.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have any other nominations? That being the case, there being only one nomination, I'll pull us back in a formal session and ask somebody to move part one and part two to insert Councillor Matt Larwood in there, and for a period of 12 months. And I presume, Councillor Group, that would be you. Thank you. Now in formal session, do you wish to move that way?
I would, thank you very much.
Do you wish to speak any further to it?
Look, probably just to say thank you to Councillor Deputy Mayor Larwood, Deputy Lord Mayor Larwood, for the work he has done over the last couple of years. Having done the role, I know it can be taxing on your time, particularly when you have a mayor who's also involved nationally. And so I'm sure he has been providing great support to you, Mayor. So I think it'd be fantastic to see another year out of Deputy Mayor Larwood, and hopefully everyone supports the nomination.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, do you wish to speak to it?
I'll just add to those comments to thank the Deputy Mayor Larwood for being there when, you know, obviously if you needed to step up in the Mayor's absence, but also for being an ear for issues in East Ward, and for listening particularly around the sporting precincts, and for coming along and visiting and taking a keen interest. So I've appreciated your interest.
Thank you. Any further speakers? That being the case, Councillor Groot, do you wish to sum up those two speeches?
I'd like to thank no, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, right, we'll take the vote. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor. Well done. Item 10.5, appointment of members of the Audit Committee. Again, I'll ask you to suspend the meeting procedures until 9 p.m. should we need it to take nominations. All those in favour? Against are thus suspended. Thank you. Do we have any nominations for the elected member position at item 3 for the Audit Committee? Councillor Ripp.
I'm obviously happy to continue in the position. However, in saying that I have done it for 2 years, if there's someone else around the table that wanted to have a go and wanted to learn in this space, I'm more than happy to share it around as well. So more than happy to help out and continue.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? Councillor Groot.
Mayor, I'd be happy for the minutes to maybe reflect. I'd be happy to nominate Councillor Ripp to that position. Is that possible?
No, but you can move it.
I'm happy to move it then.
Thank you. I know there only being one nomination, I'll come back in a formal session, accept Councillor Groot's foreshadowed suggestion that he move the item with Councillor Ripp sort of there. At item 3, you wish to speak further to the motion, Councillor Groot?
Look, again, probably a similar speech to thank Councillor Ripp for what is probably a bit of a tireless task at times being on audit and risk committees. It's tough going. The papers are long, sometimes the content is dry, but that all said, it's really important, really important for us to have a good audit committee that we can rely on. So thank you, Councillor Ripp, for being part of that. And may your 2 years in the future be exciting, thrilling and good fun.
Great speech at the top, but is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it? Okay, any further debate?
Hang on. I was suffering from mute.
Oh, sorry. Did you wish to speak?
I didn't say very much of any consequence, except for what I'm going to say now, which will be of great consequence, maybe. I think our audit committee does a fantastic job, and we really rely on the work they do to give us guidance in our roles and to help keep us on the straight and narrow. And Stephen Councillor Ripp has been a strong part of that. And so, yeah, I too appreciate the work that he puts in, and I hope that you continue to, I'm sure you'll continue to do a great job over the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Groot, do you wish to sum up?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, just Zoom makes things a little bit slow. I'll just take that again. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Ripp. Look forward to seeing you at the next Audit Committee meeting, where it is an interesting space, no doubt about it. I like it a lot. 10.6, City of Prospect Annual Report 2019-2020. Item 2 specifically allows for minor administrative changes. Staff have proofread on proofread it, and also some of you have provided some minor changes. So thank you for all of those. They will be amended. Is somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, in the current form with the administrative changes that have been pointed out. But I just think it provides a really excellent snapshot of what our council activities are. And I just wish that every resident would actually read it. So I would commend it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to speak to it?
Yep, I just want to commend the staff for putting the report together. It was very visual, very detailed, and I love how it's so transparent. So well done to everybody involved.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I'd like to say from the chair, there's a great forward to the document, but I won't, so we'll just move on. If there's no further speakers, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up? No, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.7, first budget review 2020-21, recommendations on page 40. Somebody wish to move it in its current form? Don't all jump at once. Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, go along with the recommendations. I'm just wondering, in there somewhere, that council's still not resolved whether to continue to have a car park development fund, which is $446,000. So just throw that out there to our directors. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's not a question, is it? That's just a comment.
Well, it's a very pointed question. Comment.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm just not sure whether I asked for an answer, but I won't. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor.
A quick question or a clarification, if I may. So, if we look at page, oh no, I don't have a question. I'd just like to second it and then speak to the motion.
Did you have anything substantial or of consequence to say?
I believe so, but you'll be the judge of that. So I'm just scrolling through to where I want to get to. I'd probably just like to draw everyone's attention to, say, pages 57 onwards. And this is the status of the projects here with regards to the budget and the actual spend thus far. If you look at that on face value, we've only spent 8.6%, 8.65% as of the end of the first quarter. However, if we link this report to the WIP report, has a lot of detail in there, and in having the opportunity to speak to the director earlier on today, I was assured that the first quarter is typically a quarter of low spend because there's a lot of planning and sending out of proposals and appointing contractors and so on and so forth. And the action really starts in the second quarter, and the director assured me that they'll be spending money like nobody's business from now on, and the projects are on track to be completed. I also raised the question about whether we felt we had any concerns about access to tradespeople and service providers, given that there's a lot of money being injected into the economy as part of the COVID recovery initiatives at various levels of government, and we had any concerns about the pricing that we might experience. And the director is quite comfortable with the fact that we wouldn't have issue at this point in time receiving a price, and also that we wouldn't have an issue getting the right resources in to complete the works in time, such that we didn't have a significant amount of carryover next year. So I was comforted to hear that, and also to draw people's attention to the WIP report, which shows that we are largely on track with where we should be with regards to spend in this area. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, I probably just wanted to bring people's attention to page 45 with the financial and resource implications. So basically, it looks at a net borrowing of $2,203,946, and this is an increase of $1.96 million from the original budget review. And I'm certainly conscious of some of the spending decisions that we do make, like things like the Broadview roof and things like that. We're cognizant of that. And so I think certainly I'll be making decisions based on that. I guess, if things come out from left of field, especially new projects. And I think certainly with us as councillors, we need to be mindful of any motions that we put forward, what the resource implications are, and just like Deputy Mayor Larwood says, we're going to be spending lots and trying to get lots of projects out the door in the sort of third and fourth quarters. So I'm really looking forward to us spending some money and getting some of these projects done. So thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? I'll just briefly from the chair, I'll let you know that I've made my annual speech to the CEO about carryovers. I'm never in favour of carryovers. We fight pretty hard, not physically, but to get our budgets as good as they can be. And we're told they're damn tight, and we expect everything that makes its way into the budget to be delivered by the 30th of June. Otherwise, what was the point in having the arm wrestle or going to the community and telling them what they can't have versus what they can have? It makes a mockery of the whole process that we have carried forwards unless there's a very, very good reason. COVID has made some things difficult this year. It's made other things cost more. It's not every day you get an auditor general come and have a look at your IT systems. So some things you have to cop on the chin. That's generally why I like us to have a surplus when we adopt a budget, because there are always some unexpected things. But I never like us taking too long to deliver projects which we've promised people. So you'll be happy to know I've made that speech to the CEO and everything that goes with it. He and I are working pretty closely with the departments that deal with these projects of various kinds to develop processes to try and make sure we can provide a high level of comfort at this time of year that they are going to be on track. So the Deputy Mayor spoke a bit about that. And we've had reassurances, but I've been in the project management game a long, long, long time. And reassurances are one thing, hard data, cash out the door, contracts on foot, people on the street with shovels in the ground. I believe them a lot more than reassurances, with all due respect to those who make them. Actual expenditure is out the door. It's a really good indication of what's being done. So this is always a tricky time of year, because if we approve it in June, this is around about the time that tenders are closed, consultations over, and contracts are let. So we have to make sure that as many contracts are on foot as possible very soon, or we'll miss June 30 next year. Notwithstanding, there could be anything happen between now and then, as we've experienced in the last 12 months. Thank you. Any further speakers to this matter? Okay, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up? No? No, no. I heard that even though you're on mute. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.8, discretionary rate rebate, Nature Foundation recommendations on page 62. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Deputy Mayor, I saw just before Councillor Barnett. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I guess I would just briefly say not happy to move it in its current form, but happy to get it on the floor to discuss. There doesn't seem to be much of an option here from my perspective. I'm happy to listen to the debate around the table and seek people's feedback and maybe alternative suggestions. However, I think we have backed ourselves into a bit of a corner here, at least in the short term. And the staff have clearly identified that there's been an unintentional slip up, which has got it's got a financial impact for sure, and that I'm sure steps have been taken to ensure that we don't experience this kind of incident in the future. So I'll leave it at that for the time being.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett, are you happy to second?
A bit similar to the Deputy Mayor, but unless somebody comes up with a better alternative, I don't really see what we can do except approve it.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, like everyone else, I was pretty unhappy to see this. One of the things that I'm concerned about is how we're actually wording this, and I'd be open to an amendment. Well, not me because I didn't move it, but maybe someone else to think about an amendment. We're looking at it as a discretionary rate rebate, which is reported against other organisations that also, are deserving, but, it is a business, it's a charity, but, they are a commercial tenant. And I actually think the cost, if we're looking at a cost line actually lines up with pay-in-fee. So just as we've got an empty basement and an empty foyer at the moment, which was supposed to subsidise the cost of the build, it's more appropriate to say we're subsidising their lease to the tune of whatever, and that's a cost that lies with pay-in-fee, and then they're actually paying the rates. I think that's a fairer mechanism, because if people are sort of looking, who's, you know, it might be a sporting club or a church organisation that are getting discretionary rate rebates, I think it's unfair for them to be in that same list. So I'd like someone to maybe think about if it's possible to move how it's actually recorded.
Is that a question that I can ask for an answer to?
No, possibly. I don't know. If it is possible to either amend the motion or add a third point that we can actually, instead of looking at a discretionary rate rebate, it is actually a rent subsidy where they still get charged rate to an equivalent amount of the rates.
Sorry, you're asking a few things here. Procedurally, you can move an amendment. I can answer that question. Procedurally, someone else can move an amendment. Your question, I'll convert to the CEO to say, is there an alternative to treating it as a discretionary amount, discretionary rate rebate? Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Look, we haven't tried to dress this up. This is a mistake. It's one that won't happen again. It was dressed up as a gross lease, which normally means you pay rates and outgoings. In this case, as I explained to the Chair earlier today, in the body of the lease, it exempted them. We can't dress this up as anything else than a mistake that won't happen again.
Sorry, CEO, I need you to address the question. You can't talk to the item.
Okay, sorry.
The question was, is there a different way to express it than a discretionary rate rebate?
In my view, no, because we would be requiring them to breach a contract. And we don't want to breach the contract either. So really, the option here is a discretionary rate rebate, or we're in breach of a contract.
Okay, thank you. Councillor DeBacker.
The question through the chair. The discretionary rate rebate has criteria and it's voted on through council. There's like a process for that. So I'm just wondering if we were to give a subsidy to the value of the rates, there is a different way that we can handle it in our report.
Sorry, CEO.
Point of order. Oh, CEO first.
Sorry, no, I've got to take a point of order straight away.
Well, the point of order says that on page 63, that council's lawyers said there are two ways to do it. And one is the discretionary rebate and the other is amend the rental agreement.
That's not a point of order. That's an explanation. So overruled, but thank you. CEO.
Our recommendation is clear. We think a discretionary rebate is the cleanest approach. If council don't want to do that, I guess we'd have to go and negotiate a contractual change.
Sorry, CEO, you mean a new contract or a variation to the contract? And can you just please elaborate a little bit more? I think that's the nature of Councillor DeBacker's question.
Thanks, Chair. At the end of the day, Nature Foundation want a net position. There's two ways of achieving that, as the paper says. One is a discretionary rebate. The other one is an amendment or a variation to their contract.
Okay, thank you. Councillor DeBacker, anything further?
I would prefer to see an amendment to the contract that reflects that we will cover up to the same amount, and obviously we've stuffed up. But I think to call it a discretionary rate rebate that has criteria around it is yeah, I'm not supportive.
Okay, so a bit in your hands, Councillor. I'll give you plenty of leeway. You haven't got much time left.
Yeah, my apologies. I haven't got the wording, but I mean, council provide a subsidy to the value of the equivalent rate rebate to the Nature Foundation for the term of their lease.
So you're seeking to amend part 2?
Yes.
That where council provide a 100% discretionary rate rebate, that you would say provide a subsidy
to the value
subsidy to the value of all rates and separate rates for the term of
Yep.
their lease.
Yes.
Essentially, CEO, can I just check with you if that is lawful? Firstly,
Well, certainly council has no option under the circumstances but to charge rates without a discretionary rebate. So if council doesn't support a discretionary rebate, then we will be in breach of our contract, and it will be up to the Nature Foundation to accept that they will pay rates, which they're not obliged to pay, and we will somehow reimburse them. I think it's down to the Nature Foundation could say no. They've got a clear contract. They're not obliged to vary it.
So CEO, so you're suggesting that they may accept the subsidy and still not pay the rates because they're not obliged.
No, Chair. I'm saying they may simply say we've got a contract that we've got a lease that's very clear. We don't pay rates.
Okay, so back to the question: if Councillor Backer moves an amendment such as I read out to change the word discretionary rate rebate to a subsidy to the value of, is that? I asked if it's lawful. Is it exercisable? Your simple answer is no, it's not exercisable.
It's not exercisable without the agreement of Nature Foundation. They are not obliged to agree. I don't know whether they will agree.
Councillor Backer, with your amendment, it does leave us in a quandary. It sounds like that would need to be negotiated, that we can't simply make that as a resolution of council. Did you wish to move a different type of amendment or leave it to other councillors to be?
I think I'll leave it to other councillors in this, but yeah, I'm not supportive of point 2 at this stage just because of the implied unfairness with other people who receive discretionary rate rebate in the process that we currently have around that.
Thank you. I'll go to next speakers. Councillor Groot.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I was going to raise the same issue as Councillor Backer. Actually, I'm uncomfortable with the term discretionary rebate, and I was thinking special payment or a whole lot of other words. I've just brought up a memo that was sent to us by the Director of Corporate Services a little while ago, which talks, when I raised a previous question about discretionary rebates, under the Act, it does say that council can provide a rebate under the following criteria, including purpose of assisting or supporting a business. So I'm having just read that in the last 3 minutes, I'm probably more comfortable with it, but I do think it sends the wrong message, which is a discretionary rate rebate. So can I just ask a variation of the question Councillor Backer asked, maybe of the CEO through the chair, which is, could we call it a special payment as opposed to a discretionary rate rebate? Is the naming of the rebate important? Because does it need to fall under the Act, or can it be a special payment outside of the Act?
Sorry, just and in framing the question, CEO, can you be really clear? If we don't give a discretionary rebate, we have to charge them rates under the law. Can you just expand on that as well? Because it's quite closely related to Councillor Groot's question about can we provide the money back the other way?
Thank you, Chair. So there are two competing issues here. One is our statutory requirement to charge rates, which applies in this case. And the other one is a contract that we've signed that says we won't charge rates. So the quandary is, and look, Chair, I don't think we're concerned about how we would describe it, whether it's discretionary or special payment, but it's clear that Nature Foundation are not legally obliged to pay rates. And I'm sure that if council wanted to describe this exemption in a different manner, it will be acceptable to them at the end of the day. But we are in a classic situation that we have to charge, and this council has a resolution not to charge them by whatever description. Otherwise, we're in breach of contract.
So sorry, I'm just going to, before I go back to Councillor Groot, I want to be really clear. No matter what we call this thing, a subsidy to them can only have effect if two things happen. And I want you to clarify this. The first is that they pay the rates and we reimburse them. Or secondly, we approve a discretionary rate rebate of some kind, call it whatever you like, but under the Act, we have to comply with the Act if we want to not charge rates. So those seem to be the two pathways. Am I correct?
You're correct, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Groot.
Thank you. Can I ask a question of the mechanism in which we apply discretionary rate rebates now? So when we have the other 11 odd organisations that we do this for, do we send them a rates notice with the full rates amounts and then rebate that off or net it off on the rates notice to give them the amount they actually pay? Is that how we do it? Obviously, for those paying 100%, it might be a bit different. Or sorry, the rebate's 100%, but some the rebate is 75%. So that would be kind of a similar scenario to the Nature Foundation, I would think. So I'm just trying to understand that mechanism and whether that's material in this.
Can I refer that through you, Chair, to the Director?
Through the Chair, yes, we do that, send them a bill during the first quarter and then we rebate that.
Sorry, Director, that's coming through very faintly. Could you turn up your volume or get closer to the mic? And just say that again.
Through the Chair?
That's better, yeah.
Through the Chair, we do send them a rate notice for the very first quarter and then we rebate them.
Thank you.
So sorry, I'll finish in a minute, but my last question then is, could we not rate the Nature Foundation, rebate it off, and instead of calling it a discretionary rate rebate, call it a special purpose payment? Is that possible?
Director.
Through the Chair, we need to raise the rates because we need to raise the rates and then to rebate it. We can call it, council can probably opt for a donation. I'm not quite sure, but we still need to raise the rates. So we have sought legal advice and these are the two options that was suggested.
Yeah, I wasn't intending not to raise the rates, but just in terms of that rebate notice on the rates notice, could we call that something other than a discretionary rate rebate?
Director.
Now, through the Chair, given the power that council can rebate rates, that is the criteria that we can rebate is under the discretionary rebate criteria.
Okay.
Sorry, councillors, I just need to make this really clear. We have obligations under the Act that no matter what we do, we have to do something with those obligations. The CEO has described that the contract already causes us a problem, and we've said they don't need to pay rates, but we're obliged to charge them rates. That problem needs to be fixed. What we call other stuff that happens around it, I'm open to ideas, but I don't want to take an amendment here. I'm foreshadowing this. I don't want to take an amendment that means we can't solve problem number one. So the two solutions in the paper are clear, either a discretionary rate rebate, which we do once and lasts for the duration of the contract, or we have to renegotiate the contract. And that may expose us to a risk of renegotiation, of course. So, Councillor Groot, you've probably got about another minute left, given that you asked some questions. So you haven't fully used your time.
Thank you. And presuming you've netted off your own question time as well, Mayor.
Indeed.
So, look, I'm pretty much done. Look, I'm happy to support it on the basis that the Act does allow for purpose of assisting or supporting a business. I still think we're sending the wrong message, and I would encourage, not through an amendment, but if there is other ways that we can publicly disclose this support as not being a rate rebate, but as a discretionary payment or some other way, I think that would be useful. But that being said, it does come under the Act. My last quick question is, we've got a 5+5 lease agreement. Does at year 5, does that allow us to renegotiate rental amount? And would that be an appropriate time to maybe renegotiate this back in?
CEO.
Through you, Chair, to the Director, Hannaford.
Okay, thank you through the Chair. We can't negotiate the full amount, but every year we get a CPI increase. So essentially it is a 5+5, it's essentially a 5+5 year lease is a 10-year lease, and the rates are set at that, or the amount per square metre is set at that amount for the 10-year period. So we can't just renegotiate everything at the 5-year period.
Okay.
But there are a number of small items we can negotiate, not a big item.
Okay, thank you. I'm encouraged to hear the CEO saying that this won't happen again. So thank you for that. That's all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce, and then Rip.
Just a couple of questions. Just mention the increase. So that is correct. CPI, not CPI in a percentage, whichever's greater.
I'd have to go to the lease
for a couple of years, I think.
But it is a CPI increase every year that we get.
Wow. We've got a good lease. Just a question. If hypothetically we're charging them 80,000 now, if we did this lease correctly and the rates were 8,760, the rent would have been if the rent was 71,240, which equates to the same figure. If they knew that this figure was incorrect, would we have not perhaps got them as a lessee? Do they realise they're getting a bargain here, or
CEO or director?
Through the chair, there were many issues on the table when we were negotiating, and there weren't many other takers for the actual property. So those are the terms that we negotiated with Colliers and HWL, and HWL advised that a gross lease was the best approach. However, since we've been through this, we are not doing gross leases anymore. With the crepe cart, we are getting a lease plus council rates. So we're actually getting a very good deal on that one.
So quite possibly we might not have a tenant even there now if this didn't happen, I would think.
They did negotiate very hard. They had a pro bono lawyer, and we went backwards and forwards for about 6 to 8 weeks on different clauses. It was a long process.
Okay, just a couple more questions. So it mentions all rates and taxes. So clearly that's our rates. What other, is there water rates? What other rates? Is there any other costs that we're bearing?
The only other cost that we would be bearing there would be anything to do with emergency services levy, and also our own separate rate for Prospect Road.
Right, okay. And just finally, probably you've already investigated this, would we have any hope of a claim from the lawyers? Or was this not their mistake? It was our error, was it?
CEO, might be better to address that.
What was frustrating for me is that it was described as a gross lease, and a gross lease normally means that you either absorb everything or you haven't. It was misnamed in the title, and then as you went into the body of the agreement, it actually removed rates, whereas they pay outgoing, so they pay air conditioning and all of that.
CEO, sorry, I need to address the question. You have to respond to the question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought that was the question, Chair. Sorry, my apologies.
No, the question wasn't the nature of the confusion. The question was, can we have a go at the lawyers who drafted the contract?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, anything further?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rip.
Thank you. Look, I've been listening to the debate. I'm personally not feeling comfortable with the discretionary rebate, and I would actually like to test the floor and obviously have the CEO's input as well into this. I'd like to test the floor with an amendment that this item be deferred and the council administration negotiate, and then you can pretty much put the first point, amend the rental agreement, blah, blah, blah. It's on page 63. I'll read it out just for the purpose of the meeting, but the council this item be deferred and the council administration negotiate in writing or however you want to do it in writing, probably would be a good idea, with Nature Foundation to amend the rental agreement so that Nature Foundation is responsible for the rates, and consider reducing the annual rental payment by the rates amount, i.e. no additional cost to Nature Foundation. Obviously, this is our error. I accept that. This report has proposed 2 options. I'm personally not feeling that comfortable with the discretionary rate rebate. I'd like to test, our negotiation with Nature Foundation. If they're not happy that the rental agreement be made, then we're probably going to have to go with the discretionary rebate as a last resort. But thank you for your honesty, obviously, with the error. Appreciate that it's an error, but we've got to now fix it. I'd be more comfortable with testing the first one first.
So you wish to move an amendment that item 2, so that we could defer the whole matter, actually, to defer item 10.8 to allow the council to negotiate, allow the staff to negotiate a contract amendment.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously sends, I don't know if you need to word, I'm happy with that the whole item be deferred, and that gives the administration, as I worded, the opportunity to negotiate with Nature Foundation and pretty much to amend the rental agreement and copy the rest of that bullet point. It's the first bullet point of the options on page 63.
See, I'm going to quickly cross-check with you, but given that it's an option noted in the report, do you see any difficulty with that amendment?
No, Chair, we're happy to pursue that if that's what council wants.
Okay, so an amendment's been put. Now, Jazz, I'm acutely aware that you need to screen, but to defer item 10.8 to allow staff to negotiate an amendment to the contract.
10.9, Chair, I think.
No, it's 10.8.
I've got it at 10.8.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's 10.8. Sorry, Chair. You're right. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself there.
To negotiate an amendment to the rental agreement. I don't think that's what you've moved to amend. I'd probably delete the last words, Jazz, and keep it really simple. Yeah. Because no doubt there'll be, like that issue about emergency service levy and other things will be raised. So we don't want to get bound up in a problem with that, like that. So as I normally do, I'll ask the mover and seconder whether they're happy to incorporate. Councillor Ripp, did you wish to speak any further to your proposed amendment?
Oh, sorry, do I have to wait before it gets up first, or I can speak to it now?
I'll let you speak to it now, because the mover and seconder will be better informed as whether they'll accept or not in a second. Okay,
no, fair enough. Look, I just think this is for me, I'd be more comfortable with this process. We just need to go to Nature Foundation. Obviously admit that there has been an error, as the administration have tonight, and just say to them that, whether they would be willing to amend their rental agreement so they're responsible for the rates, and then we will just simply reduce the rate payment so they're not out of pocket. I mean, really, it's just a tidy up of the contracts. You just need to be honest with Nature Foundation, and hopefully they can come to the party, because a discretionary rate, the look of a discretionary rate rebate for them or for us, I don't think it's a good thing, a good outcome. So yeah, and if they're not willing to do that, then we will have to go down the discretionary rate rebate path if that's the only other option.
Thank you. Just sorry, elected members. It's contrary. It's contrary enough to the original that I'll take it as a formal motion. I won't ask mover and seconder to incorporate, because that might create an embarrassment for us. I'll just put it as a formal motion, but to do so, I need a seconder. Councillor Pearce, you happy to second it? Wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. It's worth a try. I can't see them really, like it mentions there's no additional cost, but there's not for the first year of the lease, but thereafter it will be. If the renewals are CPI, the rates will increase, obviously. The rent won't go up. Probably the CPI at the moment is 0 or minus, but it's worth a try. And like Councillor Rip said, if they don't like that, it reverts back to what we're doing. So it's worth at least negotiating. I don't think they'd agree with it, but have a crack.
Yep. Thank you. Now, as a formal motion, I understand we don't debate these. We simply put these and they either get up or they don't get up. So I'm going to put that formal motion to you. Sorry, Jazz, can you? Thank you very much. Yes, so I can see everybody. All those in favour of the formal motion to defer? All those against the formal motion to defer? The formal motion is carried. And that's
Another division on that, Mayor, please.
Yes, we call for a division. All those against the
sorry, pardon me, Mayor. I thought you were going to ask the mover and the seconder first. That didn't happen.
I just said a moment ago that I've considered the matter as being contrary enough to the recommendation that I shouldn't accept it as an amendment. It's a deferral, so it's very easy for me to accept it as a formal motion, and that's what I've chosen to do. I've asked for a seconder, which is Councillor Pearce, who's spoken to it, and I've taken a vote on that. So sorry if you've missed that. I've now been asked for a division, so all those against the item, if you could please indicate so. Normally stand, but you won't need to stand this time because I wouldn't be able to see you. All those against?
You don't want me to stand.
Well, you can stand, but we're going to lose your face.
Well, you don't know what I'm wearing.
No, we'll be with that. Thanks.
Stand under the tree.
Thank you. Your name has been recorded, I hope. All those for the deferral. Just record your names. Jazz, can you let me know you've got all that? Thank you, everybody. It is thus deferred. Okay, thank you. Item 10.9, small business development programs. So recommendation on page 64. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to it?
Just to say it's a very comprehensive report and gives us a good outline on what's been happening. It's obviously taken a lot of work to prepare this.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Again, just really support some of the efforts. It's really interesting to look at some of the demographics and some of the numbers on Instagram, giving City Prospect a run for its money. You know, some different content for a different audience, and I think that's really important. So we're engaging lots of different people. I'd like to see some cross-pollination, so the same people that are attending Network Prospect events are also commenting on our plan towards 2040. It'd be really nice to get some different voices involved, but yeah, great work.
Thank you. Any further debate? Okay. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to sum up? No, that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item, there we go. That's the end of those reports. Item 11 is general business of an urgent nature. Is there any urgent business? Deputy Mayor.
I think that we urgently should wish Councillor Pearce a happy birthday.
You can all go off mute and sing a song if you wish. Please yourself.
I can withdraw that if you like.
Thank you. Withdrawn. Otherwise, I'd need to have a motion. Firstly, to allow that item to be considered as urgent business, and then Jake, you take the matter. So thank you for withdrawing that.
And
happy
Councillor
birthday.
Pearce would have a conflict of interest.
Well, that'd be 2 in a night. That'd be a cracker. Item 12. Let's move on. Item 12. Reports or information. The mayoral monthly activity report and the general purpose financial statements for the year ending I have to withdraw the mayoral monthly activity report because I forgot to include something. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.2, the general purpose financial statements? No, somebody happy to move that item on block, no debate. Councillor Groot. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp. There being no debate, all those in favour? Against, is carried unanimously. Thank you. Under the mayoral monthly activity report, I neglected to include that I had been to the Australian Local Government Women's Association SA AGM and took interested participants on a tour of the building. So if that can be added under the activities, I'd be happy to take someone moving it with that amendment. Thank you. Councillor Barnett, would you speak to it?
No, just noting it was the 7th of November.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, just to speak to it.
Yeah, also just want to, obviously happy to add that addition, but also want to thank you, Mayor, for your service as president of ALGA over time. And yeah, obviously saw your Facebook post with some of the achievements you're proud of, and just want to thank you. I know it's a big task, so thank you for your service in that role as president.
Thank you, much appreciated. Any further speakers? Just in response to that, I want to thank you all for your support and the support of the administration. I've tried not to make it too much of a burden, but it has on occasions been that, in terms of some admin support or some liaison between executive assistants and on occasion my absences from looking after the good people of Prospect, yourselves, of course, and being able to preside at council events. So thank you for your support. Constitutionally, I can't run any longer. I'm not sure that I would have. It's an exhausting role mentally. It's pretty hard work just trying to work out how you can get a word in edgewise sometimes, or be relevant, or make sure that you're listening to people and advocating properly, dealing with a national board. The logistics is very challenging, but I've loved every minute of it. It's been an extraordinary role, and I certainly wouldn't want to say no given the chance to do it again. I would willingly say yes. The team calculated that I'm the longest serving national president in the history of ALGA by 3 weeks. So I thought that was, if that's what I leave behind as a legacy, then so be it. But I hope it's much more. And I'm particularly proud of the $1.5 billion in local road and community infrastructure funding that we're getting. It is the first large-scale funding program for metropolitan councils since the election of the coalition government, and that was in 2013 when they brought in the Building Better Regions Fund, which has provided a fantastic funding stream for regions, but absolutely excluded metropolitan governments as an amendment to the previous long-running scheme. That was very sad. So I'm really happy that I'll be able to get some of that back into metro councils. I mean, every council participates in that scheme, but metros weren't excluded from it. So that's been a big achievement. There have been many more, and some things haven't been so good, but that's life, isn't it, in a role like that? So it's been my absolute privilege. And once again, I thank you for your support, and I look forward to being able to spend even more time with you. And gee, maybe we should catch up once a month going forward. That could be fun. No, I'm just suggesting that. If you want to, I'll be available. But thank you for your kind words, Councillor Ripp. Any further debate on this item? All right, Councillor Barnett, wish to sum up?
Just to concur and, say thank you on behalf of local government nationally for your efforts. And I think you've also made some significant inroads about recycling issues, I think, as well, brought that to people's notice even more. So once again, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. Okay, we've dealt with item 12.2. We now go to council member reports and briefings. Are there any? Councillor Nguyen.
Yep. So I attended the Australian Local Government Women's Association AGM, and that was hosted in our council building, Bayindi. I, together with Mayor Lachlan, did tours of the library. On my group tour, the councillors from Port Adelaide, Enfield were quite impressed with the loan devices in our library. And I'd like to thank the staff that was on working that day, explaining and giving them more information about that. They said that they were quite impressed and will be putting in a motion to copy that idea. So that was really, really good. What else? It was some of the councillors mentioned that the library was very impressive, and upstairs the mural outside was great. They gave a lot of feedback about the artwork and said how wonderful that was. I also want to thank Councillor Barnett for her time and effort and her dedication. With that event, I know that a lot of hard work went into that, especially with COVID, whether it was going to happen or not, and the social distancing. The attendees all received goodie bags and they all had their morning tea there, so things were done differently, but I think overall it was very good, a very successful event. And it was well done to Councillor Barnett and the team for putting on a great event. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Barnett. Yes, you're on mute, Councillor. I know.
Any rate, yes, I also attended as secretary, and yes, COVID-19, as we know, certainly throws more pressures on our organisations, and so we managed to get through that and get through our annual general meeting and networking. And on behalf of the association, I'd just like to thank the Mayor and Councillor Nguyen for taking their tours. And I think that was a bit of a highlight. Usually AGMs are, unless they're held at Wallman's Lawyers, like ours was supposed to have been. So that added, certainly added an incentive, I think, for people to come along. And I also like to thank the Mayor for his very supportive speech that he gave at our AGM as well, about the role of women and in local government, and reflecting the makeup of our communities, perhaps more on some of our councils. So thank you, Mayor and Councillor.
Pleasure. Further debate, further reports from members. Councillor Rip.
Yeah, look, I just want to thank the particularly all the staff at the City of Prospect, all the directors, but particularly the events team, and particularly the teams around Network Prospect for adapting during COVID. I know we've been challenged earlier in the year, and the staff responded really well, but we're also challenged again with some of our recent events that have had to be postponed, and staff have had to really try and work around. So I just want to put my thanks as part of my members' report to all the staff for how they've responded, but particularly the events as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further council member reports and briefings? If not, we'll move on. Motions on notice nil, questions with notice nil. Item 16 is a confidential item, but we have to go into confidence at item 16.1. Somebody happy to move 16.1.1? Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thanks.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Nguyen, do you wish to speak to it? Any further debate? I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. The process, councillors, now is that we get out of this Zoom meeting, and now we've decided to go into confidence. Jazz will send us all another link for another Zoom meeting. So check your email in the next couple of minutes and we will resume via the other link. Thank you all. Thanks everybody else who's been attending on Zoom tonight. Thank you for all those on YouTube who have been watching tonight.